the association centers connected with the spiritual life are cut off from the lower, is often reflected in the way correspondents describe their experiences. For example, temptations from without still assail me, but there is nothing within to respond to them. The ego here is wholly identified with the higher centers, whose quality of feeling is that of withinness. Another of the respondents says, "Since then, although Satan tempts me, there is, as it were, a wall of brass around me, so that his darts cannot touch me." Close quote. Unquestionably, functional exclusions of this sort must occur in the cerebral organ, but on the side accessible to introspection, their causal condition is nothing but the degree of spiritual excitement, getting at last so high and strong as to be sovereign, and it must be frankly confessed that we do not know just why or how such sovereignty comes about in one person and not in another. We can only give our imagination a certain delusive help by mechanical analogies. If we should conceive, for example, that the human mind, with its different possibilities of equilibrium, might be like a many-sided solid with different surfaces on which it could lie flat, we might liken mental revolutions to the spatial revolutions of such a body. As it is pried up, say by a lever, from a position in which it lies on surface A, for instance, it will linger for a time unstably halfway up, and if the lever cease to urge it, it will tumble back or relapse under the continued pull of gravity. But if at last it rotate far enough for its center of gravity to pass beyond surface A altogether, the body will fall over on surface B, say, and abide there permanently. The pulls of gravity towards A have vanished, and may now be disregarded. The polyhedron has become immune against further attraction from their direction. In this figure of speech, the lever may correspond to the emotional influences making for a new life, and the initial pull of gravity to the ancient drawbacks and inhibitions. So long as the emotional influence fails to reach a certain pitch of efficacy, the changes it produces are unstable, and the man relapses into his original attitude. But when a certain intensity is attained by the new emotion, a critical point is passed, and there then ensues an irreversible revolution, equivalent to the production of a new nature. End footnote. The collective name for the ripe fruits of religion in a character is saintliness. Footnote. I use this word in spite of a certain flavor of sanctimoniousness, which sometimes clings to it, because no other word suggests as well the exact combination of affections which the text goes on to describe. End footnote. The saintly character is the character for which spiritual emotions are the habitual center of the personal energy, and there is a certain composite photograph of universal saintliness, the same in all religions, of which the features can easily be traced. Footnote. It will be found, says Dr. W.R. Inge, quote, that men of preeminent saintliness agree very closely in what they tell us. They tell us that they have arrived at an unshakable conviction, not based on inference, but on immediate experience, that God is a spirit with whom the human spirit can hold intercourse, that in him meet all that they can imagine of goodness, truth, and beauty, that they can see his footprints everywhere in nature and feel his presence within them as the very life of their life, so that in proportion as they come to themselves, they come to him. They tell us what separates us from him and from happiness is, first, self-seeking in all its forms, and secondly, sensuality in all its forms, that these are the ways of darkness and death, which hide from us the face of God, while the path of the just is like a shining light, which shineth more and more unto the perfect day. Close quote. End footnote. They are these: 1. A feeling of being in a wider life than that of the world's selfish little interests, and a conviction, not merely intellectual, but as it were sensible, of the existence of an ideal power. In Christian saintliness, this power is always personified as God, but abstract moral ideals, civic or patriotic utopias, or inner visions of holiness or right may also be felt as the true lords and enlargers of our life, in ways which I described in the lecture of the reality of the unseen. Footnote: the enthusiasm of humanity may lead to a life which coalesces, in many respects, with that of Christian saintliness. Take the following rules proposed to members of the Union pour l'Action Morale. Quote, "We would make known in our own persons the usefulness of rule, of discipline, of resignation and renunciation. We would teach the necessary perpetuity of suffering, and explain the creative part which it plays. We would wage war upon false optimism, in the base hope of happiness coming to us ready-made, on the notion of a salvation by knowledge alone, or by material civilization alone. Vain symbol as this is of civilization, precarious external arrangement, ill-fitted to replace the intimate union of consent of souls. We would wage war also on bad morals, whether in public or in private life, on luxury, fastidiousness, and over-refinement, on all that tends to increase the painful, immoral, and antisocial multiplication of our wants, on all that excites envy and dislike in the soul of the common people, and confirms the notion that the chief end of life is freedom to enjoy. We would preach by our example the respect of superiors and equals, the respect of all men, affectionate simplicity in our relations with inferiors and insignificant persons, indulgence where our own claims only are concerned, but firmness in our demands where they relate to duties towards others or towards the public. For the common people are what we help them to become. Their vices are our vices, gazed upon, envied, and imitated, and if they come back with all their weight upon us, it is but just. We forbid ourselves all seeking after popularity, all ambition to appear important. We pledge ourselves to abstain from falsehood in all its degrees. We promise not to create or encourage illusions as to what is possible by what we say or write. We promise to one another active sincerity, which strives to see truth clearly, and which never fears to declare what it sees. We promise deliberate resistance to the tidal waves of fashion, to the booms and panics of the public mind, and to all the forms of weakness and fear. We forbid ourselves the use of sarcasm. Of serious things we still speak seriously and unsmilingly, without banter and without the appearance of banter, and even so of all things, for there are serious ways of being light of heart. We will put ourselves forward always for what we are, simply and without false humility, as well as without pedantry, affectation, or pride." Close quote. End footnote. 2. A sense of the friendly continuity of the ideal power with our own life, and a willing self-surrender to its control. 3. An immense elation and freedom as the outlines of the confining selfhood melt down. 4. A shifting of the emotional center towards loving and harmonious affections, towards yes, yes, and away from no, where the claims of the non-ego are concerned. These fundamental inner conditions have characteristic practical consequences as follows. A. asceticism,